A lot of times when God calls us to move, we want to have 100% clarity. But get this, that's rarely going to happen. As a matter of fact, when God calls us, the degree of clarity that he gives us to move on the calling will often be dependent on the circumstances and the seasons that we're in, as well as our level of faith. And it will often be dependent on how big of a jump of faith that God is calling us to take. The bigger the leap of faith that God is requiring us to take, oftentimes means that we'll probably have less degree of clarity, just because we're unsure, because something may seem farther away from us than if something is something that's close to us, something that we understand, something that's very familiar. So just know this, the degree of clarity will change based on what God is calling you to and where you are in your growth, in your faith walk. And the more you mature in your faith walk, the more you'll be willing to trust God with lower degrees of clarity. Sometimes that degree of clarity to step into a thing may look like 95%. Other times may look like 51%, and that's okay. And also recognize that that degree of clarity may actually change as you're actively obeying God in something that he's invited you to fulfill or to walk with him on. So, great example. We talk about some of the great believers in the Bible. Abraham is given this covenant promise, and he's told to leave his country and go down to Canaan. God says, I'm going to make you into a nation. I'm going to give you a son, right? It doesn't happen until 25 years into that journey with God. So I'm sure that when he started with God, maybe he had 70% clarity. But then as the journey continued to go on and he still doesn't have a child and he's still moving around in Canaan, and then he goes to Egypt and then he goes back, maybe at one point that clarity is at 45%. And then right when God gives him Isaac, then that clarity is at 100%. So we have to recognize that sometimes the degree of clarity is going to shift and change. Our job is just to be obedient and to move on the faith and the degree of clarity that we do have. And don't procrastinate or delay what God's calling us to do. So go be great, go be blessed, and go run into God's purpose.